To the richest man in town, George Bailey, says younger brother Harry, as many neighbors and friends come to help George out of a situation that could be extremely bad for George and his family. I'm sure we all remember that scene. It's towards the end of the movie, It's a Wonderful Life by Frank Capra, and it's after George has discovered how his mercy to others was as important to the people of Bedford Falls as God's mercy is to us. That movie always hits our TV screens this time of year. It's the story of George Bailey, a man who has put his dream on hold in order to run the family business. George's dreams are of getting out of that small town and traveling to exotic places. But his devotion to his father and mother, his brother Harry, and the family business wins out, and he stays to run that business after his father's sudden death. So George does his duty, but he always feels like a sellout. He thinks his life is worthless because it did not end up the way he dreamed it would. One day, as George contemplates leaving it all, he meets an angel named Clarence. Clarence takes George on a dream of a trip and shows George what life in Bedford Falls would have been like if George had never been born. Clarence shows George how he has influenced and helped people who may otherwise end up going down the wrong path in life, or worse yet, not having lived a life at all. George realizes that his life truly is one of meaning, and we're led to believe that he will live a life that has true meaning not only for the people around him, but for George as well. His Christmas gift was being able to see what he believed to be a meaningless existence was really a life full of grace and compassion. George's visit with the angel Clarence was a life-saving event. We believe being saved or salvation means that once we die, we go to heaven. We are saved by our faith. We are saved from eternal damnation. But there is a second way to look at salvation. That way can occur here and now. It is Jesus saving us from those things that would bring us to eternal damnation. Sin, such as greed, pride, and lust, but also from hate, alienation, and despair, as it was in George's case. The responsorial psalm points to God being our Savior, and that all the actions mentioned are those we can do now. Give thanks, be confident and unafraid, sing praise. All of our readings point to giving thanks and having joy today because we are to be saved in this life as we live now. John is telling people how to do it. He's not telling them to leave everything behind or remake ourselves into some people that we're not, but just to be as virtuous as possible, to exercise our responsibilities as honestly as possible. Because if we don't, then that second kind of salvation will escape us, and we will not be the wheat, but we will be the chaff. Even Ebenezer Scrooge found that out. We know the story. A stingy old man goes to bed Christmas Eve only to be visited by three spirits: Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. These spirits show Ebenezer some joyful things, but with a horrible ending of him because he didn't change his ways. However, Christmas morning, we do see him with a totally changed heart, giving and being merciful to all he meets. He has taken the warnings to heart and is accepting the salvation today, not waiting until the end of his life for forgiveness and for mercy from God. In Romans chapter 13, verse 11, it says, and do this because you know the time. It is the hour now for you to wake from sleep. For our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. We're being told that there is no better time than the present to allow this salvation to take over our lives. But for that salvation, we need God's mercy. And we also need to live a merciful life. Salvation comes from mercy, and Pope Francis is pointing that out. He has announced that there will be, or there has begun this past December 8th, an extraordinary Jubilee year. And in this case, an extraordinary Jubilee year of mercy. The motto he chose is, merciful like the Father. And we are able to see his mercy in the face of Jesus. Jesus, the all-forgiving, all-loving, all-merciful Son of God. Pope Francis's signature message of his pontificate is mercy. This is a special year because in the Roman Catholic tradition, a holy year is held roughly once every 25 years. It's for the forgiveness of sins and the punishment due to sin. This tradition goes back all the way to 1300 with Pope Boniface VIII. It's a year of reconciliation between adversaries, conversion, and a time to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. It's a year to serve Christ in joy and in peace. So what better time to celebrate this idea? In these times of the continuous senseless killings, like in San Bernardino the other week, the exponential growth of heroin users where there's overdoses every day, thousands of people without homes due to their country's politics or the weather, and over 50% of the population no longer identifying with religion of any kind. We may need to feel the inner joy that only can come from God, the recognition of a God that is merciful, not vengeful. We can be more like the George Bailey that recognized his salvation. We need to be the Christmas morning Scrooge that had his eyes opened so as to live as a person ready to accept and live the salvation. And we can do this by living in God's world of mercy and extending that mercy to others. We too can be the faces of mercy as Jesus was. The world needs to be changed. This Advent season, Pope Francis has pointed us in the right direction. He is our spirit of Christmas future. But he can only show us, guide us where we need to go. It's our decision. Will we allow the bad things of the world to hold us down, or will we live the life of joy that God has made available to each and every one of us?